I'm going to be going over my Void Erosion build that I've been using for 3-minute clears of Void Erosion. Now I've seen a lot of builds for Serena, but I wasn't very happy with them, so I've came up with a new one. This is primarily for solo Void Erosion, as I'm not very happy with the co-op builds. The main two weapons we're using is the Malevolent, which we get from the Battle Pass, and the Last Dagger. So for the actual Descendant, this is my current build here. A lot of people just build for cooldown, using Nimble Fingers, MP Conversion and Multi-Talented, or maybe even some focus mods. I find that this takes up way too many module slots on the character and you don't have enough slots for health. And the way that we save slots is by using Veteran's Tactics. So whenever we defeat an enemy, we have a 20% chance to reset a random skill, and the cooldown is only 5 seconds, so you can basically reset the skill. So you don't even need any cooldown modules. And I can demonstrate this in the lab. As you can see, whenever I use my 4th ability, and I kill the enemies, I instantly get my 4th ability back. And since there are so many enemies in Void Erosion anyway, and we're killing them fast enough, we actually are able to upkeep our 4th ability the entire time. I say this only works on solo, but you can use this on co-op if you want. However, if you're not the one killing all the enemies, you won't have your 4th up. So to go over the skills, the first one, we basically only use this so that we can recover ammo on our weapon. Say for instance we run out of ammo, we just hit the enemies with our first ability and simply shoot them, and this will fill up our ammo. The second ability, we just use this so that we can fly around. Since our MP cost is so low, we can actually fly around basically for free. I'm still messing around with it a little bit. I'm actually able to make it so I can fly and gain MP faster than I actually lose it. And this is thanks to Maximize Conservation, which gives us skill cost reduction, along with Final Wish. This also gives us skill cost reduction of 37%, but we lose skill power. But since we don't need skill power, this doesn't matter. And we have this up infinitely because as long as we're attacking enemies, we'll always have the 37%. And to demonstrate this, under the basic info, continuous MP cost of 5.2, which we're at currently, if I use my 4th ability and I attack the enemies, you'll see that the continuous MP cost goes down to 1.8. Now I have been messing around with this module here. This gives us more HP. We don't need the skill cooldown, but you can actually swap this with Strong Mentality for even lower cost, and we can get it down to 3.8. So whenever we are attacking an enemy, we have 0.9 skill cost. And as you can see, the MP bar, I am flying around and it's just barely going down. And with enough MP recovery on your components, you can actually gain MP faster than you lose it. In this build, we use our 3rd ability for the sole purpose of just moving around the area. And we actually change this ability to the Transcendent mod so that we can actually move in the direction. The way this works is we just simply run in any direction we want to go and hold down the 3rd ability. This will let us fly around the area a lot faster, making the clear times in Void Erosion faster as well. And one small thing that you should keep in mind is, even though it doesn't say it on the description, this actually still reloads your weapon, and we use the 4th ability as our main damage output. Since we have this up constantly and it costs literally nothing, this gives our weapon AoE damage, which are the yellow diamonds around the enemies. And the way we scale this damage is simply by increasing our health. Now currently on my current character I have 37,000, and the way that we achieve this is through the following modules: Overwhelming HP, which converts our shield into health, then we use Stim Accelerant, then Increased HP, and then we also use Time Distribution for the extra 52.4. I did actually forget to change this. Through testing, I find that shot focus doesn't actually benefit you that much. I would actually recommend switching shot focus for some more shield, as this will increase our health even further thanks to Overwhelming HP, converting our shield to health. This increases our health even further up to 38,000, and that allows us to deal more damage. We take Maximize Duration so that the 4th skill lasts longer, as we don't want to be constantly using the skill, as this is also a damage loss because we're going to be in an animation lock waiting for the actual skill to trigger. So the more duration we have, obviously the better, but we're quite limited to how many module slots we have. And obviously the range, we use the range because this allows our 4th ability, the diamonds that go towards all the enemies, to spread out even further if the enemies are slightly further away. And then obviously whatever grappling hook you want. For the components, Currently, the Reactor doesn't really matter. I'm using this one just for the skill cost and duration. You could also go for range to maybe max out the range of your fourth. However, I do think duration and cost would be the way to go. As for the components, you can actually get slightly better components than what I have. Currently, I'm using the Decimator Auxiliary Power simply for the max health of 646 and the additional stat of max HP 898. Then I'm using a sensor with max HP, a memory with max HP, and then you want your processor to have max HP and max shield. For your auxiliary power, you can also have MP recovery out of combat, and for your sensor, you could actually take, for the substats, max MP and MP recovery in combat. If you have MP recovery in combat, this allows you to recover your MP faster than you lose it if you want to go down that route. For the memory, you can also get defense and MP recovery modifier. This just increases how much MP you'll recover as well. And for the processor, you just want shield recovery modifier and max shield. The extra max shield of 256, that gives you more health as well. Now also, if you were going to min-max this build, for the components, I would recommend going for the Ascending Armory Auxiliary Power and the Ascending Armory Sensor, as this gives max HP of 646 as well. And you can actually tell which components give 646 or 484 simply by looking at the max HP, and it says max HP of 18 or max HP of 14. 14 will be 484 and 18 will be 646. Now, the reason we go for the Ascending ones for the sensor and the power is so that we can get the two set effect of skill cost 6.5%. And then for the memory and the processor, we could go for Annihilation. However, the Annihilation processor has less HP, meaning we deal less damage. You could go for this if you wanted the extra 5.7 duration. However, I find that this is probably unnecessary since you'll be losing damage due to having the lower HP. So if you were to min-max this build, I would just recommend switching the auxiliary power and the sensor to the Ascending so that we can have slightly lower skill cost. This is my current Arche Tuning tree. I simply come up here to grab the extra MP and MP recovery modifier since I had the 2 extra points. However, my current tree is simply going for every HP node on the tree. So we simply come down here, grab the 42.8, that's a huge boost. We come all the way down here. Now the resistances are pretty useless. However, we just need to take these because it's the shortest path to grab everything we need. We come all the way down here and grab the enhanced max HP of 55%, and I find it worthwhile grabbing the enhanced max shield of 59%. However, every other shield node on the tree is completely useless. 2% is terrible, you never want to grab these. But we come up here because there's some more health, and conveniently there's also skill cost reduction and skill effect range. This increases the range of our fourth ability, and this skill cost allows us to fly for longer and make every other skill cheaper. We come in the middle here and we grab a little bit of extra defense just for, and then we grab the last HP node. Now we could come into the right and spend only 2 and have 2 extra nodes from the defense. However, I find that there's no actual area that benefits from spending the extra nodes. Now I've seen some people come up here and grab the firearm attack. This is good, however this only benefits your weapon, and since we're dealing damage with our skill, this is completely useless. This firearm attack, you'll end up dealing way more damage if you just have lots of HP. Even an extra node of HP of 1.8% is way better than 0.2 firearm attack. As for the weapons, I use Malevolent. Now a lot of people are going for the elemental attributes. These are still good. However, I've found that just going for basic firearm attack is a lot better, and this actually scales your blade's damage as well, allowing clear times to be a lot faster. So for the cores, we use double firearm attack, 1 chill and 2 fire rate. I'm contemplating switching one of the fire rates for rounds per magazine, however that's entirely up to you. And for the rolls on the weapon, I'm currently using firearm attack, chill attack, bonus firearm attack against Legion of Darkness, and rounds per magazine. That rounds per magazine only gives an extra bullet, so it might be worthwhile going for something else. For the current modules I'm using chill enhancement and refrigerated gun barrel. For the chill, I was previously using chill circulation, however I find this to be literally a wasted module slot. This gives you chill attack plus 89%. This is only whenever you inflict frostbite, and it only lasts for 5 seconds, and you have a cooldown of 15 seconds. So those 15 seconds are just wasted. There's no point in using this. I then use charge amplification for more firearm attack, and since this weapon has a very low crit rate, we don't need critical damage either. We then increase more firearm attack and even more firearm attack, so 3 firearm attack. We use fire rate so we can just fire the weapon faster. We then use recycling genius so we can reload the weapon faster. And for the golden mod, I use payout, so whenever we land a weak point attack on an enemy, all the ammo in the weapon is not consumed for 3 seconds. I find that this weapon has an ammo issue. Obviously in Void Erosion 30 we can pick up a lot of ammo off the ground, so it's not too bad. We want to be able to fire this weapon constantly throughout the entire thing, so I find reloading faster is good, being able to fire without consuming any ammo is good, and having even more ammo with expand impact to magazine, max impact rounds plus 50, and expand weapon charge rounds per magazine plus 49%. Now this 49% is pretty bad. If you look at the cores, you can actually change one of these cores for 150% magazine size instead, which might even be more beneficial. The unique ability, once fully upgraded, will give you 3 bladed cogs on hit, 4 when you do weak point hits, and you get a max bounce of 5, meaning the cogs bounce between the enemies 5 times, along with the firearm damage being increased by 24%. For the Last Dagger, I find that an elemental attack is pretty bad for this as well. So on my cores I use firearm critical hit damage, 2 firearm attacks, and 2 fire rate. The more fire rate you have on this weapon, the more damage you're dealing basically. And then for the rolls, I use firearm attack, bonus firearm attack against Colossus, firearm critical hit damage, and weak point damage. The only reason I use the firearm attack against Colossus is because I use this weapon against Tormentor as well. Now you could obviously build an extra weapon and change those rolls if you wanted, depending on your use case for this weapon. However, I use the exact same build for the Colossus that I do for the boss in Void Erosion. So I use fire rate, critical hit damage, even more critical hit damage, and we use Firing Fiesta. Firing Fiesta is good because whenever we reload, rounds are not consumed for 3 seconds, and since our third ability reloads our weapon whenever we use our third ability, this triggers it as well. Or if you just simply reload the weapon, it will also trigger. Action and reaction, firearm attack, have aiming is weak point damage, weak point sight is more weak point damage, rifling reinforcement, firearm attack, and then Tenacious Hunter, whenever you reload, you get weak point damage increase of 5% for 3 seconds, and while this effect is active, every successful weak point attack is increased further by 5% up to 20 stacks, which is just a huge damage boost as long as you're aiming for the enemy's head, or if you're fighting against a Colossus, aiming for their shoulder. So whenever we hit an enemy, we gain the unique abilities Patience and Lethal Dagger. Lethal Dagger lasts for 15 seconds. However, there's no cooldown for this, so that means whenever we hit an enemy we continuously trigger it, the duration to reset. And if we get up to 30 stacks, we gain Firearm critical hit rate of plus 2.2 as a base, and then Firearm critical hit rate per stack 2.2 as well, which basically means we gain 66% critical hit rate for this weapon just from the unique ability. And the way we increase that even further is by adding Better Insight that gives us 39%, allowing us to crit way more often. So whenever I reload the weapon, we gain the buffs, and we are constantly critting. And since we're constantly critting with this weapon, the more firearm critical hit damage we have, the more damage we're dealing. That's why I recommend using the critical hit damage core on the weapon for the free core slot. Another thing about Malevolent, I've seen a lot of people using Snowflake Conductor. This is completely useless. This only affects the enemy you're shooting at, so there's really no point in using this module either. If you're using this module, this is basically just a wasted module slot on the weapon. The enemy isn't frostbit for very long, and it only affects the enemy you're shooting at, because the blades don't gain this plus 26%, and whenever the blades hit the enemies that are inflicted with frostbite, that doesn't count either. So whoever's recommending you to use this for your Malevolent, I would just say remove it entirely and switch it for something else. It's more beneficial. Anything is more beneficial than this, to be honest. For your Inversion Reinforcement, you want to take Chill Focus Rounds. This gives us Chill Attack plus 4.8% up to 5 stacks whenever we hit an enemy. And this doesn't have a cooldown, so whenever we hit an enemy, it will constantly refresh the 30 seconds over and over again. We then also want a Biodensity Augmentation. This increases our max HP by 11.7 up to 5 stacks, so 58.5% for 30 seconds. This doesn't have a cooldown either, so every single time we defeat an enemy, we're constantly refreshing the 30 seconds, which means we have 58.5% constantly up the entire time. And for this season only, we have Evolutionary Cutting Mechanism. This was actually nerfed from +3 to +2, but this basically gives our Malevolent 2 extra bladed cogs, which increases the damage as it allows more cogs to bounce around the enemies. However, even without this, the weapon is still good. But since this is here anyway, and it's here for another 80 days, you may as well use this. Now, the Biodensity Augmentation is actually really useful. This increases our damage even further, since we gain 58.5% more health. So if I demonstrate right now, whenever we defeat enemies, as you can see, our health has went up all the way up to 41,000. Now I'm going to do a quick run through Void Erosion on private so you can get a demonstration of how to actually use the build and the clear time of the entire mission. On average, I'm able to clear this within 3 minutes every single run, but you could probably get it even faster. I'm just making it so you can clear the mission very easily so that you can get the cores for building your weapons.